Yeah, folks. So, you may or may not know that one of my first titles on re entering the games industry was a primarily 30 FPS. Eventually, it became 60 FPS, but a 30 FPS narrative horror driven game. Now, if you ask me, like, what is the best sort of game I could have imagined working on as a lighting artist, coming back into the games industry from games education, it would be a narrative horror driven game. I've learned a lot from this, and in this video, I'm going to cover how some of these portfolio pieces or portfolio renders are constructed, and what are some lessons I've learned from this. Because this was about a 1 year, 6 month sort of duration, right? What have I learned from that I didn't know, that I wish I knew when I started? So, should get a lot of value from that. So, it's important to note with a game like this, these sort of narrative horror driven, uh, make a conversational decision, slow paced, on rails type of game. It's a lot of cinematic lighting and a little bit of level lighting. So I've done both. So I'm going to come at it from both perspectives in regard to that. But let's just look at a few screenshots first. So I've separated these on my ArtStation into cinematics, which are run from Unreal Engine Sequencer, because we used Unreal Engine. And in the other piece, there's going to be gameplay. So these at the moment are the cinematic shots on best PC settings, and with film grain on, which is a bit. Some people like film grain, some don't. For screenshots, I think it's good, but for gameplay, it can get a bit messy. But as you can see, just lots of sort of cinematic shots. I've done thousands of shots, but the ones on the portfolios, I just picked the angles that I thought looked coolest and took a 4K screenshot of them. And some of these cinematics do have like lots of environments in where you can kind of light those parts of the environments. But it's so important to remember that when you're doing cinematic lighting, you have a lot more freedom to a degree than level lighting, because you're locked into a camera. So you still have to worry a little bit about optimization. You don't want to go crazy with lights, otherwise your cutscene won't run at 60 FPS. But you can, let's say I had another section here. You can, for example, do a lot more with fake lights when you are doing these cutscenes. Like, some of these have environments in, some of them don't. And on the other section, we have the level lighting. So this is gameplay lighting, when you can walk around in the level and go through a level. So if you've played the game, these are some of the areas that I lit. So dark forest with snow. Did a lot of this area. I was the level owner for this chapter area. Some interiors. And you get the general picture, right? So just lighting various environments and whatnot. So it's split into those two sections. Now, in a company, in a lot of the bigger AAA companies, cinematic lighting and level lighting are separate. But because Ballistic Moon was a small studio, like a AA/indie sort of feeling, we did eventually get up to 80, 100 people, but it was still AA. The lighting artists did both of those. Now, some people were more cinematic than others, for sure. But I primarily did level lighting and cinematic lighting. I could do both to the degree that was required, right? So I got a bit of a cold. So if we think about cinematic lighting first. Now, when you have a cinematic, when something runs in a cinematic in Unreal, we'll use Unreal as a base. You are spawning lights in. So the lights that are lighting this character are not the lights that are in the environment. So if I turned off all the cinematic lights on this character, you probably wouldn't get much light on him at all. You'd get maybe a tiny bit of the environment lighting, like directional light, but it's a pretty dark level. So we have sort of most of the time, 3 to 4 lights in cinematics like these, and having 3 to 4 lights really helps you keep things optimal. So first we have the key light. So imagine where my mouse is. This is coming up here, hitting the character. Also, take a note of the eye. The eye can usually tell you where your lights are, where your strong lights are, with these little light bulbs in the eyes, the reflection. So we have one in the top right of the eye, which is that's going to be his key light, because the key light is up here, casting a side onto the side. It's not causing any lighting on this side, no Rembrandt or anything like that. It's just purely up the left, and a spotlight. We use spotlights for cutscenes, and we'll use Control-Shift-P to pilot the light. We'll have 2 viewports up, and we'll have this angle in one viewport, and we'll have the light in the second viewport controlling that, and we will sort of point this in a certain direction. So for this one, it's split lighting. The second bulb of light in the eye, and there are 3 lights lighting this character, but you can only see... you can only see 2 in the left eye and 1 in the right eye. And that's because the most powerful lights will show up in the eyes, but the subtle fill lights probably won't show in the eyes unless you're really pumping up the fill. So if you see the bulb of light here on the sort of inner part of the eye, and then sort of towards the middle on here, that is the rim light, or the kick, call it a kick, rim. What that is doing is, if you follow my mouse, that is tracing a contour around the side of the character and bringing out the side plane of his head. So if you imagine, we have a key light that highlights the left side of the face, a kick light that is doing the side of the other side of the face, but not the front, just the side, to sort of kick that out. And then we have one more light that sort of is facing somewhat front on, maybe to an angle, but it's such a low intensity that you won't be able to see it. And this just basically means you will not go to black on the shadows. So as you can see, our shadows are at about 7% using Power Toys. And then in the background, we will usually overwrite the environment lighting. So for example, in a lot of these levels, there's at least one directional light, and you can overwrite the directional light in Sequencer. So I will often overwrite that, and I will tilt it. I'll rotate it so it makes the background look pretty interesting, but nothing too specific. As you can see, it's dark on the corners. There's a bit of atmosphere in the background. I'll just generally make it so the background isn't too dark or too light, so the character can stand out against it. And then that's good to go. We didn't use lumen. We just used dynamic lighting with probes. And that is the anatomy of how a lot of these cutscenes are lit. So same again here, but you'll notice now, you'll probably say, wait a minute, you have a sort of cold kick light on the left plane of the head. In this cutscene, why isn't there a plane of light here? And that just comes down to really sort of, we knew that we wanted 3 to 4 lights. We know that we wanted 3 to 4 lights per character. We had a very specific art direction for not going to black, but going quite dark on lights, and to have powerful key lights and as cinematic darks as we can. Now, when it comes to the rim lights, a lot of it wasn't forced, so we use them if we felt it looked better. If we didn't, we took them off. So even if that broke consistency, we decided to do that in these cases. For a shot like this, whenever you have something that is lighter in the background and darker at the front, if a character is there, we'll let them go down to quite a low darkness. So if I look at the darkness on the back, we try to keep our shadows at about anywhere between 2 to 5%, which this is. So we have, in this shot, I have a fill light up here doing Matt on the back, and a fill light up here doing Emily's back, no lights at the front. And then I use a lot of the environment lighting in the background. However, I place a spotlight up here that highlights this snow. That way the focus is inside to the shot. So with a lot of cinematics, you can work your lighting in a way that is going to work to the composition. Because at the end of the day, you can't move around in these cutscenes with gameplay. The character's on a preset animation path. So that's why that's like that. Same here for a shot like this. We try and darken areas that aren't important, and then try and focus the eye towards where detail is. Here's another shot. You can see that Chris is very dark. He's silhouetted. So your eye kind of goes past him and to the characters, but then fades out on the darkness on the side here. So with a lot of these horror style games, we try to focus the composition to where the camera is pointing. Now, it's important to note a lot of these shots are successful because of our cinematic artists as well. We had 2 cinematic artists on. We had a few contractors as well, but we had 2 full-time salary cinematic artists, and they set up these cameras with the amazing focal length, and that is doing a lot of the work as well. So when you mix lighting with really good cameras, with really good models, it all comes together, right? It like glues together. There's another shot. Camera work is great. It's got cameras pointed straight through the fence. There's a fake light in the background here just to sort of pop Chris out. But you'll also notice split lighting going quite dark on the side here. Shadows are again 5-6%. So usually when we take a lot of screenshots of shots, we'll use this Power Toys tool to just measure rough values for this sort of stuff. Skin tones as well, we would aim for 30 to 35, but that was quite late in the project. So Power Toys was something we discovered, our lead, Javert, discovered, and it was very helpful. And again, a lot of the same stuff. Darken the source so it focuses into the background. As you look at these screenshots, as I'm telling you these things, you'll start to see the pattern. You'll start to see the recipe for how Until Dawn was lit. Again, dark into light, always focusing the eye into the image. Same with these as well. You'll see it every single time. It's all relatively consistent for the most part. So that's how the cinematics is done. So we aim for 3 to 4 lights. Usually 1 light is in the background, helping bring up the background, because you never know where the camera's going to point. It might point to a corner where you haven't got much going on lighting wise. And it doesn't matter because it's a gameplay level, but the cinematic's pointing there. So, in this shot here, I had I had like a spotlight to just bring the background up a little bit. And that's completely fine. I know I talk about physically based lighting. You want lights to always come from light sources. For gameplay, yes. For cinematics, those rules don't apply. You can, because you've got fake lights hitting the character at the end of the day. So it's all about the cinematic shot. Don't go overboard though. You don't need to have more than 5 lights a lot of the time for a single character shot. 4 is pretty much enough. Now with this shot, I would improve this shot. So you notice the background is very dark. So I personally would have placed 1 or 2 spotlights in the background of this shot if I could do it and improve it to just bring up some detail, because at the moment, yeah, it's 6.5%, but you can't really see anything because there's no light bringing out the forms. So that's where the gameplay lighting is, but in the cutscene, I would have ideally brought that up with a spotlight. Like here. You can see in this shot I brought this up a little bit to give a gradient, but I didn't redo it here. So it's just something that I missed because, it happens in production. For this shot, I placed the key light below and facing up because he looks very evil in this shot with how it's animated and the expression. So you can see here, my light is down here, pointing up, and then I have a fill light. A lot of the time you can look into the eyes of the character and that will sort of tell you where the key light is in a lot of cases. So that's the recipe for cutscene lighting. Now, what would I change if I was doing things now? So I would make pretty firm rules on using only 4 lights per character. You'll also notice there aren't many wide angle shots with multiple characters in because they are pretty tough to light. They don't look that good at wide angle. But when you do, you can't just have lots of lights. You generally will have 1 to 2 lights per character. You'll have to be very optimal. So lighting people in groups is actually quite tough when it comes to cinematics. That's why a lot of these portfolios, including mine, you will see it's all the juicy cinematic shots most of the time. But yeah, you always want to be careful of how many lights you put in because you can still drop below 60 FPS in a cutscene, but you just get more freedom of how you place those lights when you're doing it. So for environment lighting, it's important to note that we weren't physically based on this project. I started to learn about physically based lighting towards the end of this project, and I know a ton of things that I would do differently on here as a mid-level lighting artist to help my team out. But ultimately, I'm still proud of the work we did. So there's lots of fake lights in these sort of levels. They're placed high up so the character doesn't walk through them, and they highlight parts of the environment. So in an environment like this, I have a spotlight in the air every sort of 10 meters, and it just highlights the path. One of the things I would change is I would lift the skylight up a lot more in these levels by at least triple, because I think ultimately the game was a little bit too dark, even with our current settings, for gameplay. And that can be quite difficult for a player to map the space. Like this level is too dark, so I would for sure lift up the skylight or exposure to bring more detail out of the shadows. So darkness in games is very, it's one of those things that's quite tricky to get right from art direction and from design, because one wants cinematic blacks and the other wants accessibility so the player can map the space, and you've got to find like a middle ground for that, which is always a challenge. But yeah, with these levels, I try and place lights in front of doors to help guide the player or highlight sort of places. That's just your general sort of lighting approach. If you have windows, the more windows the better, because you can put a light outside the window to guide the player. In this level in the basement, you can see I've got this light that highlights this area. I just thought that looked cool, and the player had to go down there anyway. They have to go across this bridge. So a lot of it is just trial and error. Just try stuff, see how it works, work on your feedback, and then apply it, and you'll be good. So yeah, that's again, most of this was dynamic. There was a little bit of baked in the game, but most of it was dynamic. My biggest tips for lighting environments: if I was to relight my environment on Until Dawn now, knowing what I know, I'd use blueprints for all the lights. I would not use fake lights as much as possible. I would use the skylight to bring up more of the ambience, and I would instead use more light props around the level instead of using fake lights to light the environment, and vice versa. So yeah, those are sort of the things I've been sort of doing, and for Until Dawn, and what I've learned from it. So depending on what you want to do, cinematic lighting is much more like film lighting. You light the frame, you think about the optimization versus film. You should have some good lighting rules in place to make sure that you don't go over the sort of optimization limit. But if you're a level lighter, it's a lot more technical than cinematic lighting. So I can do both. I'm happy to do both and work in both. But some people prefer to only work on cinematic lighting because they don't want to do all the technical stuff. Some people want to work on level lighting because they don't want to do cinematic. So that's why you have the roles split. But yeah, if you've got any questions, ask them in the comments below. And I hope you enjoyed this first members sort of exclusive video. More to come. Any suggestions, let me know. But for now, peace.